Hello, this is the continuation of Unfortunately for Society, Izuku is a Khanivore. Written by LouieTheDragon. Read by Stick. Chapter 14. I don't dive, and I don't lose. At the time of mid-morning the next day, the news of another dead hero student spread throughout the city like wildfire. People were understandably scared out of their minds. The hustle and bustle at the Musutafu police station was getting to be overwhelming at this point. There were visitors left and right. A lot of those visitors consisted of friends and family of the latest victim, Ojiro Masaru. There was crying, screaming, and people demanding explanations that no one could give. All of them were obviously in the first stages of grief. Yet there were few exceptions. Tsukachi was elbow-deep in paperwork, and this latest death was only making matters worse. He didn't know how much more of this he could take. It was like some god out there heard his cries because, "Excuse me." Tsukachi sat up from where he had his head on his hands, only to see a green-haired child peeking through the cracked door. The boy looked nervous to be there, but that was understandable. He frowned. "Shouldn't you be talking to the receptionist?" The boy fidgeted. "I tried, multiple times, but they just kept directing me to other people, then just directed me to you." Tsukachi had to refrain from pinching the bridge of his nose at the incompetence shown by his subordinates. "Okay, that's fine. What did you want to speak about?" At that, the boy brightened, almost to the point where the detective wondered if that was his quirk. "Yes, okay, thank you. I was wondering if I could possibly intern here. I know a lot of people are stressed out for some reason because there's a lot of people out in the waiting room, and I thought you'd like some help." The boy then offered a sheet of paper to Tsukachi, who took it and read it over. He was slightly surprised to see a full cover letter and resume. Oh, and he definitely underestimated the boy's age. He thought he was like 11, but no. It turns out the boy is 15. Midori Izuku, huh? Tsukachi quickly scanned it. What stuck out was the skill in hero analysis. He stopped on a full-fledged analysis of the underground hero Rock Lock. This particular hero was more unknown than Eraserhead. It was surprisingly detailed and accurate. Maybe he could help, he thought, before mentally shaking his head. No, he needs training first. Tsukachi realized that he may have been thinking for a little too long because the boy then started to mumble under his breath. "Oh no, is it too creepy? I think I should probably done a more daylight hero, or probably a Eraserhead, since he's been in the media lately, but they still don't know his quirk. I'm probably being creepy again. Maybe I should just take it back before they..." "You're hired," said Tsukachi. Izuku blinked owlishly. "Reject it?" he finished. What the detective said took a second to register in his mind. When his brain caught up, a bright smile overtook his face. "Thank you. I promise I won't let you down. What do I have to do first?" Tsukachi was nearly blinded by the enthusiasm. Either that's gotta be his quirk, or Tsukachi needs a hell of a lot more sleep. The detective let go of the mug of his coffee, put his hands in front of him, and looked at the boy. He separated his mess of paperwork into two piles. He gestured to the ones on the left. "These are my finished paperwork. Could you stack them into the file cabinet behind me in alphabetical order? I'm really on a backlog right now and use as much extra help as I can get." The green-haired boy complied with the order. The two of them stayed there, working in a companionable silence for a while. Tsukachi was surprised at the amount of productivity the two of them accomplished. The boy was smart and equally adaptable. Honestly, it shouldn't have been as much of a surprise when he eventually checked his phone to find it was 5 p.m. He looked up to find the boy, Midoriya, just sorting the last of the paperwork into their respective cabinets. Midoriya looked up at him, still as eager as he was hours ago. Sakachi visibly checked his watch. Even though his internal clock knew what time it was, give or take an hour or so. "All right, kid. Your first official day starts tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." He gave a half-hearted salute towards the kid as he bowed more before leaving. Sakachi has always had a soft spot for kids, especially when he went through this one's file. Quirkless. He could sort of relate. It had taken him and his family a while to realize his quirk, as subtle as it was. He told the rest of the officers of the new, official as of 5 minutes ago, intern. After the few admittedly weak cheers, he then reprimanded them on their being so incompetent as to let a teenager get all the way to his office on line of deferral. Izuku wet his lips. He sat on a park bench, waiting. It was like 12 a.m. and no one else was around. Izuku had made sure to be on the edge of the park in case the person he was meeting had requested backup. The person he was waiting for sat next to him only after he had waited for about 20 minutes. There was no backup in sight. "So you're Shinso-kun and Todoroki-kun's friend." Izuku looked towards the person speaking, having been snapped out of his musings. The voice belonged to the boy who had been collapsed in the alley during the fight with Stain. Izuku made sure to put on a brighter smile than usual. "Yep, that's me." He made a sit-down motion with his hand. The bespectacled boy hesitated, which was smart on his part, before complying. It was awkward for a moment where nobody talked. Izuku's smile slowly fell, and a neutral expression took its place. So Izuku began, snaking his left hand around the boy's shoulders in what outsiders would see as a familiar gesture of longtime friends. "Iida-san, right? Hitoshi and Shota have told me about you." Izuku's smile was sharp, and he could smell the fear radiating from Iida. As his arm wrapped around his shoulders, his hand stopped at his neck and curled itself into a claw. As it did so, his fingers sharpened accordingly into what seemed like something metallic. Iida muttered softly, "Shit." However, it seemed that Iida could sense something about how Izuku was reacting, because he said, "Todoroki mentioned your name before." Bakugo shouted some drivel of how you were quirkless. Izuku couldn't help but snarl at the word, with his face shifting into something else, but going back too fast to catch it. Iida huffed a tight breath. "That just proves my theory." Izuku's head snapped up at him, and the claw around Iida's throat tightened almost enough to break skin. Iida stiffened and grew more still. He didn't dare move his head, lest he bleed. "What theory?" Iida looked like he had to refrain from either crying in fear or pushing his glasses up his nose to get ready to talk. Iida, without moving his neck, looked towards the green-haired boy and said, "You are not human." Izuku froze. He stopped, holding himself back. There was no one else around. He grew, standing up, turning back to face Iida. He licked his lips and grew more menacing. He spoke. "Such a shame, Iida Tenya. You seemed like a good person." Iida started to frantically wave his hands in a sort of panicking and robotic way. "Wait." Izuku stopped, humoring him. Iida recognized this and hurriedly continued. "I came to have a negotiation with you." Iida's hands continued waving frantically. Izuku's head tilted to the side. "Oh." Iida visibly shuddered, violently. "I am honored bound to protect the innocent, and would have protected you in your youth, and I know your situation of being quirkless, I mean. But I cannot promise that I will try to stop you, should I see it. However, if you restrict your wrath and do it out of sight, I will have nothing to speak of." Even with a change in face shape, Izuku smiled. "Interesting way to put it, Iida-san." He stepped back from where he was leaning close to Iida. he stopped growing and instead started shrinking back to his normal self. Izuku put on the same bright smile from beforehand, before waving goodbye to Iida and skipping away. This left Iida with the realization that he had just been very, very close to death, so much that he had nearly heard the Grim Reaper laughing. With that in mind, he let out a shaky breath, and a small manic scream, but no one but him needed to know that, and walked away as well.